Imagine you are standing on scorched stone, your boots slick with blood that isn't dry yet. The air tastes like iron. Somewhere below the walls, a man screams, not a clean scream, but the wet, bubbling kind that ends when something inside him tears. You look out and see them. Tens of thousands. Banners snapping. Drums pounding like a second heartbeat. Saladin's army. And behind you, 700 knights. That's it. No reinforcements. No escape. So here's the impossible question that should not even exist in history. How do 700 men survive? No, how do they shatter an army 50 times their size in a single day? Stay with me, because what you are about to hear is not the story you think you know. Because in the next hour, you're going to witness 5 moments so insane that medieval chroniclers themselves didn't know how to explain them. You'll see how a king who could barely mount a horse because his body was rotting alive still terrified one of the greatest generals in history. You'll watch Saladin, calm, brilliant, undefeated, make one decision that quietly poisoned his entire campaign. You'll feel the moment when hope dies completely inside the walls of Belvoir Castle, and why the knights didn't surrender even then. And finally, you'll hear about the forgotten trick, so brutal, so effective, that turned Belvoir from a tomb into a slaughterhouse. But first, you need to understand how hopeless this really was. Because history books sanitize this moment. They reduce it to numbers and dates. They don't tell you what it felt like to wait for death on those walls. You are now in the year 1182. The kingdom of Jerusalem is bleeding. Not metaphorically, literally bleeding out. Every road is unsafe. Every village outside the walls is ash and bones. Saladin, Sultan of Egypt and Syria, has done what no Muslim leader before him could. He has unified the Islamic world. Egypt, Damascus, Aleppo, Mosul. One will. One command. And now that force is rolling south like a sandstorm with swords. Belvoir Castle squats on a basalt plateau overlooking the Jordan Valley. Black stone. Hard angles. It doesn't look beautiful. It looks angry. Like the earth itself pushed it up as a weapon. And inside it are around 700 fighting men, Knights Templar, Frankish knights, sergeants, and foot soldiers. Their armor is dented. Their horses are thin. Their supplies are measured in days, not weeks. Outside? Saladin has somewhere between 35 and 40,000 men. Cavalry so numerous that the ground vibrates when they move. Infantry with curved blades that have already tasted Christian blood from Galilee to the Red Sea. Siege engineers. Archers. Veterans who have broken castles before. You think this can't get worse? Wait. Because Belvoir isn't just outnumbered. It's isolated. King Baldwin IV, the Leper King, is nowhere near strong enough to ride to its rescue with an army. The barons are divided. Reinforcements are a fantasy. If Belvoir falls, the Jordan Valley opens like a wound, and Jerusalem itself becomes reachable. Everyone knows it. Including Saladin. Now here's where most histories skip ahead. They say Saladin besieged Belvoir. They say the castle held. They move on. But that's not what happened. What actually happened inside those walls was slow psychological torture. Days where nothing happened. Days where everything happened. Days where men prayed so hard their gums bled. And nights where the screams outside never stopped. Picture this. Night falls. The heat doesn't leave, it just becomes sticky, suffocating. Torches bloom across the enemy camp like a false city. Drums roll, then stop. Horns sound, then silence. This isn't noise. It's deliberate. It's meant to keep you awake. To remind you that you are surrounded. That someone else controls the rhythm of your fear. One of the knights, his name was Gerard of Ridefort, a Templar veteran, leans against the parapet and vomits. Not from wounds. From exhaustion. He's been awake for nearly 48 hours. Every shadow looks like a ladder. Every creak sounds like the end. Below, Saladin's men drag forward prisoners captured from nearby villages. Some are Christians. Some are Muslims accused of helping the Franks. They are beaten where the defenders can see them. Sometimes killed slowly. The message is simple. This is your future. Inside the castle, Water is rationed. Bread is hard. Meat is already gone. Men chew on leather straps to keep their mouths wet. Horses whicker nervously, smelling the blood on the wind. And presiding over all of this, hundreds of miles away but omnipresent, is King Baldwin IV. You need to understand Baldwin, because without him, this story collapses. Baldwin is in his early 20s. He should be in the prime of his life. Instead, his fingers are clawed and numb. His face is marked. He cannot feel pain in half his body, which sounds like a blessing until you realize what that means. He doesn't know when he's injured. He doesn't know when infection is killing him. His bones are softening. His flesh is decaying while he is still alive. As a child, Baldwin realized something was wrong when he could hold his hand over a candle and not feel the burn. That's how his tutor discovered the leprosy. From that moment on, Baldwin knew two things: he would die young, and his enemies would never wait for it. Every campaign he leads is done knowing his body is betraying him. Every battle costs him something he cannot recover. But he fights anyway. Because if he doesn't, the kingdom dies first. Saladin knows this. He respects Baldwin. And that respect makes him cautious, but not cautious enough. Because Saladin believes something crucial: no garrison this small will fight to the end. Hunger always wins. Fear always wins. Time is his ally. So he settles in. And that's when the defenders do something insane. They don't wait. One dawn, as the sun crawls over the Jordan Valley, the gates of Belvoir open. For a moment, Saladin's men think they're seeing things. No one charges out of a besieged fortress this outnumbered. It's suicide. 700 knights form up. Armor strapped. Banners raised. Not all of them are mounted. Many can't afford horses anymore. But they advance anyway. Imagine being one of Saladin's infantry at that moment. You've heard the stories. Frankish knights are demons in iron. Men who don't break. Men who kill through pain. And now they're walking toward you. The first clash is thunder. Lances break. Shields shatter. Steel screams. The Franks hit like a hammer, punching a hole straight through the lighter troops on the outskirts of the camp. For minutes, just minutes, it works. Muslims fall. The line buckles. Dust and blood choke the air. Hope flares inside the castle walls. Maybe, just maybe, they can do more than survive. Then the counterattack comes. Saladin's cavalry sweeps in like a tide. Arrows darken the sky. Horses slam into the flanks of the knights. Men are dragged from saddles, stabbed through gaps in armor, trampled until bones snap like twigs. A knight named Hugo of Tiberias takes an arrow through the throat. He tries to speak. Blood pours out instead. Another, a Templar sergeant called Matthew, loses his footing and disappears under a wave of bodies. No one sees him again. The charge collapses. The survivors fight their way back to the gates, dragging wounded men, leaving others screaming on the field. The gates slam shut just as enemy cavalry crashes into them. Silence follows. Then laughter from the camp below. Inside Belvoir, the truth settles like a weight on the chest. That was their best chance. And it failed. This should have been the end. Most sieges end here. Morale breaks. Surrender follows. History moves on. But Baldwin had planned for this moment long before the first drumbeat. Because while Saladin was surrounding Belvoir, Baldwin was doing something that looked insane to his own nobles. He was refusing battle. Barons begged him to ride, to gather what forces he could and strike. Baldwin refused. He stayed still. He conserved strength. He watched. And that restraint, born of pain, intelligence, and sheer stubbornness, set the stage for what came next. And here's the part almost no one tells you. Saladin was not trying to storm Belvoir. He was trying to lure Baldwin. Every day the castle held, Saladin's army had to feed itself in hostile territory. Horses needed fodder. Men needed water. Supply lines stretched thin. The longer he stayed, the more vulnerable he became to a relief force he couldn't see. But Saladin believed Baldwin was too weak to move. That assumption would cost him dearly. Before we go any further, You need to meet 3 people. Because battles aren't won by numbers. They're won by humans. First, a knight called Odo of Saint Amand. Elderly by Crusader standards. His armor no longer fits perfectly over a body worn by decades of war. He commands a section of the walls. He has buried 2 sons already. He expects to die here. Second, a Muslim archer named Yusuf ibn Khalid. From Damascus. He writes poetry when he's not at war. He believes this campaign will end the Franks forever. He believes he is on the right side of history. Third, King Baldwin IV himself. Sitting miles away, his hands wrapped in cloth to hide the sores. Listening to messengers describe blood and fire. Knowing every delay costs lives. Knowing every move could destroy everything he has left. All 3 are about to collide in a way none of them expect. And the next decision, made not on a battlefield, but in pain and silence, will turn this siege from inevitable defeat into legend. But first, Belvoir has to hit rock bottom. Because what happens next inside those walls makes even hardened knights pray for death. And that's where we're going next. The worst part isn't the fighting. It's the waiting. Days bleed into nights. Nights into mornings that bring no relief. Inside Belvoir, time loses meaning. You measure it by thirst. By how often someone stops answering when you call their name. Water runs low first. The cisterns were full when the siege began, but 700 men drink faster than you think, especially men wearing mail under a sun that feels like it's trying to burn the soul out of your chest. They start rationing. 1 cup a day. Then half. Lips crack. Tongues swell. Men wake choking because their mouths are too dry to breathe properly. Food follows. Bread turns to stone. Mold appears, scraped off and eaten anyway. Horses are slaughtered, not for battle, but for meat. You don't eat the good parts first. You eat everything. Hooves boiled for hours. Marrow sucked from split bones. The smell of rotting flesh never quite leaves the air. And then comes disease. Wounds that should heal don't. A nick on the arm turns black. A scratch on the leg oozes pus. Flies swarm. Men whisper the word rot like it's a demon that might hear them. Odo of Saint Amand watches his section of the wall thin out. Every morning, fewer men report for duty. Some are dead. Some can't stand. Some just don't wake up. One night, a young knight, barely more than a boy, starts screaming in his sleep. They shake him. He doesn't wake. His eyes are open, but he's not there anymore. Fever has taken him. By morning, he's dead. They bury him inside the walls. There's no time to dig deep. The ground is hard basalt. They stack stones. Say a prayer. Move on. Outside, Saladin's camp grows quieter. And that's worse. The drums stop. The horns fade. Torches are fewer. It feels like the enemy has relaxed. That's because they have. Saladin is patient. He knows the castle is dying. He doesn't need to bleed his men against stone walls. Hunger is doing the work for him. Yusuf ibn Khalid notices the change. He's an archer, posted on a low ridge overlooking the fortress. At first, the Christians would shout insults, throw stones, fire crossbow bolts uselessly into the distance. Now, silence. No banners moving. No challenges. Yusuf writes in his journal that night. He describes the castle as a beast whose breath is failing. He believes the end is close. Saladin believes it too. And so does almost everyone inside Belvoir. This is the moment where history expects surrender. This is where messengers are usually sent out under white flags. Where negotiations begin. Where lives are traded for pride. But something strange happens instead. The defenders don't surrender. They sing. Not loudly. Not triumphantly. At first, it's just a few voices in the chapel. A psalm. Cracked voices. Off-key. But it spreads. Men join in from the walls. From the stables. From the infirmary where wounded men lie on straw, barely conscious. The sound drifts out over the valley. Saladin's men hear it. They don't understand the words, but they understand the meaning. Defiance. It unsettles them. Yusuf writes that the sound made his skin crawl. They sing as if already dead, he writes. As if death no longer frightens them. And that's the truth. When fear runs out, something else takes its place. Inside Belvoir, a decision is made. Not by vote. Not by command. But by collective understanding. If they are going to die, they will choose how. Odo of Saint-Amand gathers the remaining knights under his command. Fewer than 200 now. Many wounded. Some barely able to hold a sword. He tells them the truth. No speeches. No promises. We cannot hold forever, he says. Relief may come. Or it may not. If we surrender, we die slowly. If we fight, we choose our end. No one argues. They begin to prepare for something desperate. Meanwhile, miles away, King Baldwin IV is deteriorating. His hands are wrapped in linen soaked with wine and herbs to slow the rot. His face is pale. His legs are weak. He cannot ride without assistance anymore. Each movement costs him. The barons gather around him, arguing in low voices. Some urge retreat. Some urge negotiation. Some urge him to stay alive at any cost. Baldwin listens. Then dismisses them. He sends messengers instead. Not to Belvoir. To every corner of the kingdom. He calls in favors. Old debts. Obligations sworn years ago. He doesn't ask for full armies. He knows he won't get them. He asks for speed. For any man who can ride. For knights who can be ready in days, not weeks. It's not enough. Everyone knows it. But Baldwin isn't trying to match Saladin's numbers. He's trying to time him. Because Baldwin understands something crucial, Saladin is overextended. 35,000 men don't live off courage. They live off food. And the longer they sit outside Belvoir, the more fragile they become. Baldwin plans to move, not to attack the camp directly, but to threaten its lifeline. It's a gamble so insane that even his closest advisors think it's suicide. And that's why it works. But before we get there, Belvoir must endure its darkest night. It comes without warning. Just after midnight, the silence breaks. Not with drums. Not with horns. With fire. Flaming arrows arc through the sky, hissing like snakes. They slam into the outer structures. Stables. Storehouses. Anything that will burn. The defenders scramble. Buckets are passed. Cloaks are thrown over flames. Men scream as fire catches hair, skin, cloth. Then the ladders come. Hundreds of them. Saladin has decided it's time. The walls erupt in chaos. Arrows fly. Stones are dropped. Oil, precious oil, is poured and ignited. Men climb anyway. A Muslim soldier reaches the top, sword in hand. He's cut down instantly. Another follows. Then another. Bodies pile at the base of the wall. Yusuf ibn Khalid climbs one of those ladders. He later writes that he doesn't remember deciding to do it. He just did. The world narrowed to rungs and breath and the sound of his heart pounding in his ears. He reaches the top. Sees a knight in front of him. Older. Scarred. Eyes hollow. Odo of Saint-Amand. They lock eyes for half a second. Odo brings his sword down. Yusuf barely blocks it. The impact rattles his bones. He slips. His fingers lose purchase. He falls. He doesn't die. He lands on bodies. Broken men cushion his fall. He crawls away, bleeding, shaken to his core. The assault lasts hours. By dawn, the ground around Belvoir is carpeted with the dead. And still, the castle stands. But inside, the cost is unbearable. More than 100 defenders are dead or dying. Ammunition is nearly gone. Water is almost gone. This is it. This is the point where even the most fanatical defenders usually break. Saladin expects surrender by midday. Instead, he gets something else.
Assorti.
The gates open again. But this time, it's different. This time, the knights don't charge. They walk. Slowly. Deliberately. Shields locked. Swords low. It looks like madness. Saladin's officers hesitate. Is this a trick? A surrender? A bluff? Then the knights start throwing things. Not weapons. Bodies. The bodies of their own dead. They hurl them down the slope toward the enemy lines. It's horrifying. It's deliberate. It's psychological warfare at its most raw. The message is clear: we are already dead. You cannot threaten us with death. Saladin is furious. He orders the assault renewed. And that's when everything starts to go wrong. Because while Saladin focuses on breaking Belvoir, Baldwin moves. Not toward the castle, but behind Saladin. Baldwin's force is small. A few thousand at most. But they move fast. Faster than Saladin expects a leper king to move. They hit supply depots. Wells. Forage parties. They burn grain. Poison water sources. Kill messengers. Saladin doesn't realize the danger at first. By the time he does, his army is already feeling it. Horses weaken. Men complain. Tempers flare. Discipline slips. And still Belvoir does not fall. This is the moment, the precise moment, where Saladin faces a decision that will define the siege. He can commit fully. Throw everything at the walls. Take horrific losses, but end it. Or he can withdraw, regroup, and deal with Baldwin. He chooses wrong. He splits his forces. It seems logical. It seems safe. It is catastrophic. Because Belvoir only needs one thing now: time. And Baldwin is about to buy it with blood. But before that happens, the defenders must survive one more day. One more night. And what happens in that final night inside Belvoir is so brutal, so desperate, that later chroniclers would quietly leave it out. Because it doesn't sound heroic. It sounds like madness. And that's where we're going next. The final night before dawn feels wrong. Too quiet. Too still. No arrows. No drums. No shouts drifting up from the enemy camp. Even the insects seem muted, as if the land itself is holding its breath. Inside Belvoir, the silence is unbearable. Men whisper because they're afraid to speak aloud. Afraid that if they do, something will answer. Torches burn low. Oil is almost gone. Shadows stretch across the stone like long fingers. The smell inside the castle is a mixture of blood, smoke, rot, and human waste, because there is nowhere else to put it anymore. This is what siege warfare really looks like. Not glory. Not banners. Just slow decay. Odo of Saint-Amand sits against the inner wall, his sword across his knees. His hands shake, not from fear, but from exhaustion. His armor hasn't come off in days. His beard is stiff with dried blood that isn't all his. A young sergeant sits nearby, sharpening a blade that's already worn thin. He asks Odo a question without looking up. Do you think they'll come again tonight? Odo doesn't answer at first. He listens. He strains to hear anything beyond his own breathing. I think, he finally says, that if they come again, it will be the last time. The sergeant nods. That's all he needs to hear. Elsewhere in the castle, a knight named Raymond, once a minor lord from the coast, kneels beside a wounded friend. The man's leg is black with infection. It smells sweet and foul at the same time. Everyone knows what that means. Raymond grips his friend's hand. I can't feel it anymore, the wounded man whispers. Is that good? Raymond swallows. No, he says softly. The man begs him not to let the Muslims take him alive. Raymond promises. He doesn't say how. This is the point history never lingers on, the private agreements men make when survival is no longer guaranteed. Just before dawn, Odo orders something unthinkable. The chapel is emptied. The altar is stripped of anything that can burn. And the wounded who cannot fight, those too far gone, those who cannot walk, are moved into the inner keep. Not for safety. For mercy. Some are given wine until they pass out. Some are given prayers. Some are given blades. No songs are sung now. When the sun rises, Saladin's banners stir again. The assault comes without warning. No preamble. No gradual escalation. The full weight of the army surges forward. This time, the ladders don't come first. The rams do. Huge beams, tipped with iron, swing against the gates. The sound echoes through the castle like the beating of a giant heart. Boom, boom, boom. Each impact sends vibrations through the stone. Dust falls from the walls. Men stumble. Archers on both sides loose until their fingers bleed. Crossbow strings snap. Arrows embed in flesh, in wood, in stone. A section of the outer wall cracks. Not collapses, cracks. It's enough. Saladin orders everything forward. Infantry rushes. Cavalry dismounts to join the press. Men climb over bodies, slipping in blood, screaming prayers as they go. The defenders fight like men already damned. They don't pull back. They don't conserve strength. They strike until arms fail, then strike again. Odo kills 3 men in less than a minute. The 4th wounds him badly, a blade sliding under his arm. Odo doesn't feel it at first. When he does, he laughs, a raw, broken sound. "This is it," he mutters. The gate finally gives way. Not fully. Just enough. A gap opens. Muslim soldiers pour through. Inside the courtyard, it becomes slaughter. No formations. No tactics. Just bodies crashing together. Steel ringing. Men grappling in the dirt, stabbing blindly. Raymond finds his wounded friend again. The man is being dragged by enemy soldiers. Raymond doesn't hesitate. He drives his sword through his friend's chest. The look of relief on the dying man's face will haunt him forever. Elsewhere, Yusuf ibn Khalid is back. Despite his injuries, despite his fear, he has returned to the fight. He follows the surge through the broken gate, heart pounding, convinced that victory is seconds away. He sees Christians everywhere, bloody, desperate, still fighting. One of them charges him. Yusuf shoots him point blank. The night keeps coming. Yusuf draws his dagger, stabs upward into the man's throat. The night collapses on top of him. Yusuf screams as the weight crushes his ribs. He pushes, wriggles free, gasping. Around him, men are dying in piles. And then something happens. A horn sounds. Not from the castle. From behind Saladin's army. At first, no one understands it. Then another horn answers. And another. Panic ripples through the Muslim ranks. Messengers ride hard toward Saladin's command tent. Baldwin has struck. Not the main camp. The supply trains. Entire sections of the rear are burning. Smoke rises. Horses bolt. Men scatter to protect food, water, everything they need to survive. Saladin realizes it too late. He has committed too much force to the assault. The units inside the castle are suddenly isolated. Odo sees the change instantly. He doesn't know why it's happening, but he feels it, the pressure easing, just slightly. He roars orders. Push. Push now. The defenders surge. Men who should not be standing stand. Men who should not be alive keep fighting. The Muslims inside the gate begin to fall back, but there's nowhere to go. The press behind them turns deadly. They are crushed between stone and steel. Yusuf is caught in it. He stumbles. Someone trips him. He falls again, this time under feet. He feels ribs break. Air explodes from his lungs. He thinks he will die here. Instead, a hand grabs him, pulls him back. A fellow soldier drags him clear just as the defenders slam the gate shut again, crushing men in between. The courtyard is a charnel house. The assault has failed. Again. Saladin orders a retreat. Not because he wants to. Because he has to. His army is bleeding in 2 places at once. Belvoir still stands. And now, something far more dangerous has happened. Saladin's aura of inevitability has cracked. Inside the castle, the survivors don't cheer. They don't celebrate. They collapse. Men slump against walls, sliding down into pools of blood. Some laugh hysterically. Some sob. Some stare blankly at nothing. Odo sinks to his knees. He presses a hand to his wound and realizes how badly he's hurt. Warmth spreads. His vision narrows. He whispers a prayer. Not for victory. For endurance. This should be the end of the story. This should be where the siege drags on until starvation finishes what swords could not. But history has one more turn left. And it is here, right now, that Baldwin's true plan reveals itself. Because the attack on the supply lines was not the main move. It was the distraction. And what Baldwin is about to do next will force Saladin to make the single most humiliating decision of his career. But to understand it, you need to step inside Baldwin's mind. Inside a body that is failing. Inside a will that refuses to break. That's where we're going next. King Baldwin IV cannot sleep. Not because of pain, he passed that threshold years ago, but because of calculation. Maps are spread before him. Crude. Smudged. Marked with charcoal and bloodstains from a nosebleed he didn't feel until someone pointed it out. He studies the Jordan Valley like a chessboard where every piece is already cracked. Belvoir is still standing. That alone changes everything. If the castle had fallen, Baldwin's options would be zero. Jerusalem would be next. Acre after that. The kingdom would collapse inward like a rotten lung. But Belvoir holds. And that means Saladin is stuck. Stuck deep in hostile territory. Stuck feeding tens of thousands of men from a countryside already stripped bare. Stuck trying to crush a fortress that refuses to die. Baldwin understands something few commanders ever truly grasp. Victory is not about destroying your enemy's army. It's about destroying their choices. So he takes away Saladin's choices. He orders his forces to spread, not to fight, but to threaten. To appear everywhere and nowhere. To light fires on hills at night so it looks like armies are gathering. To let scouts be seen deliberately. To let rumors run wild. Saladin receives conflicting reports. A Frankish force near Tiberias. Another near the Yarmouk. Raiders near his rear again. Wells poisoned. Grain torched. None of these forces are large. That's the point. Saladin can crush any one of them. He cannot catch all of them. And while this happens, his army begins to suffer. Horses die first. They always do. Without grain and water, cavalry becomes useless. Men start walking. Tempers shorten. Discipline erodes. Soldiers argue over rations. Officers beat men to keep order. Yusuf ibn Khalid feels it in his bones. His ribs are wrapped, but every breath hurts. He hasn't eaten properly in days. The promised victory keeps slipping just out of reach. The Christians were supposed to break. Instead, they keep surviving. He writes again. God tests us, he says. But I do not understand the lesson. Saladin calls a council. His generals argue. Some urge one final, all-out assault. Others warn of disaster if Baldwin's forces grow stronger. No one can agree. Saladin listens. And then he looks toward Belvoir. The castle still stands. Scarred. Bleeding. But alive. It has done something no fortress should ever do. It has pinned him. This is where history often portrays Saladin as calm, patient, almost serene. That's a lie. Saladin is furious. Not because he is losing, but because he is being denied closure. He wanted Belvoir to fall quickly, cleanly, as a message to the entire kingdom. Instead, it has become a symbol. And symbols are dangerous. Inside Belvoir, the defenders sense the change too. The assaults stop. Entire days pass without attack. At first, they don't trust it. They expect another storm at any moment. Men sleep in armor. Weapons never leave their hands. But the storm doesn't come. Instead, scouts report movement. The enemy camp is thinning. Fires go out. Tents come down. Saladin is withdrawing forces. The realization spreads slowly at first, then all at once. They are pulling back. Odo of Saint-Amand weeps openly when he hears it. Not from joy, but from release. From the sudden knowledge that he might live. Raymond slumps against a wall and laughs until his voice breaks. Men hug. Men pray. Men sit in silence, afraid to speak lest the moment shatter. But it's not over. Because Saladin doesn't leave quietly. He does something final. He sends an envoy. Under flag of truce. The message is brief. Cold. Professional. He will withdraw his main army. But Belvoir is isolated. No relief will come soon. The defenders may keep their castle. For now. It's a threat wrapped in courtesy. Baldwin receives the same message. He reads it slowly. Then smiles. Because Saladin has just admitted the truth. He has failed. Belvoir has won. Not by killing 35,000 men. But by refusing to die. Saladin withdraws. The siege ends. The Jordan Valley breathes again. And for the first time in months, the Kingdom of Jerusalem survives another season. But the real cost is only now becoming visible. Inside Belvoir, fewer than half the original defenders are still alive. Many will never fight again. Some will never walk. Odo of Saint-Amand dies weeks later from his wounds. Quietly. Without fanfare. History barely remembers him. Raymond lives, but he carries the memory of killing his friend for the rest of his life. Yusuf ibn Khalid survives too. He returns to Damascus scarred, disillusioned, older than his years. He never climbs a ladder again. And Baldwin? Baldwin rides to Belvoir after the siege. Barely. He is helped from his horse. He walks the walls slowly, leaning on a cane. He looks at the scars. The bloodstains. The places where men died for time. He knows the truth. This victory is temporary. Saladin will return. Stronger. Smarter. And next time, the kingdom may not be so lucky. But for one day, just one impossible day, 700 men stood against the tide and held. History would later compress this into a paragraph. A footnote. A successful defense. What it hides is the human cost. The terror. The madness. The decisions no one should ever have to make. And it hides something else too. The lesson Saladin learned here. Because after Belvoir, Saladin never again underestimated a Frankish fortress. And after Baldwin, no one ever doubted what a dying king could do with time and will. But there is one final truth. One detail almost never mentioned. Belvoir did not crush Saladin's army by force. It crushed his certainty. And that is often more devastating than slaughter. If you've made it this far, you now know something most people never will. You know that history is not written by the strongest armies. It is written by those who refuse to break when breaking would be easier. And that, more than any number on a page, is why Belvoir Castle still matters. One last thing. Remember that moment when the gates opened and 700 men walked into an army 50 times their size? They didn't do it because they thought they would win. They did it because they had already accepted death. And when men stop fearing death, even empires hesitate. That is the real story of Belvoir. And now, you carry it. Now stop for a second. Because this is where most stories end. Castle survives. Enemy withdraws. King is praised. History moves on. But that ending is a lie of omission. Because the real aftermath of Belvoir doesn't happen on the battlefield. It happens in the weeks, months, years after. And it's darker than anything you've heard so far. When Saladin withdraws, the land doesn't magically heal. Villages are still burned. Fields are still empty. The Jordan Valley smells like death long after the armies leave. Wolves and dogs fight over corpses. Farmers refuse to return. Trade slows to a crawl. Belvoir stands, but it stands alone. The castle has become a warning to both sides. To the Franks, it is proof that resistance is possible. That even when abandoned, even when outnumbered beyond reason, they can still deny Saladin victory. To Saladin, it is something else entirely. A lesson burned into his strategic memory. From this moment forward, Saladin changes. He stops wasting men on strong castles unless he can isolate them completely. He stops assuming morale will break just because hunger sets in. He stops underestimating leaders who look weak. And that shift will eventually doom the kingdom of Jerusalem. Because Saladin learns. The Franks do not. Inside Belvoir, the survivors are ghosts. Men wake screaming at night. Others refuse to sleep at all. They flinch at sudden sounds. They ration food even when supplies return, unable to trust abundance again. Some leave the castle forever. They walk away from knighthood, from vows, from war. History never records their names. Raymond leaves Belvoir months later. He returns to the coast, marries, has children. He never speaks of the siege. Not once. But his wife notices that every year, on the same day, he locks himself in a room alone. Yusuf ibn Khalid grows bitter. He still believes in Saladin. Still believes in the cause. But something has cracked. He saw men who should have surrendered choose annihilation instead. It troubles him. Years later, when Jerusalem finally falls, Yusuf is there. And when the city surrenders peacefully, he thinks of Belvoir. He wonders what would have happened if they had fought the same way. King Baldwin IV does not live to see that day. His body continues to fail him. Fingers are lost. Vision dims. He is carried more than he walks. And yet, he keeps ruling. Keeps planning. Keeps holding the kingdom together by force of will alone. Belvoir is his kind of victory. Not clean. Not permanent. But defiant. He dies in 1185, barely 24 years old. When Saladin hears of his death, he pauses. Not in celebration. In respect. Because Baldwin was never his easiest enemy. He was his most dangerous. Now here is the part history truly hides. Belvoir did not crush Saladin's 35,000 in a day. Not in the way Hollywood wants you to imagine. There was no single decisive massacre. No field drowned in enemy blood. What Belvoir crushed was momentum. It crushed confidence. It forced the greatest commander of the age to stop, reassess, and adapt. And that pause, brief as it was, bought the kingdom of Jerusalem time. Time to breathe. Time to exist. Time to delay the inevitable. And sometimes, in history, delay is everything. Think about the psychology of this. Imagine being Saladin. You have unified the Islamic world. You are undefeated. You command tens of thousands. You move like fate itself. And then a black stone castle on a hill refuses to die. Not because it is stronger than you, but because the men inside decide they would rather be erased than submit. That thought follows you. It gnaws at certainty. It forces caution where there was once confidence. That is power. And now, here's the final twist. Belvoir's defenders were not heroes in their own time. They were criticized. Some barons accused them of recklessness, of wasting lives, of stubbornness. Others said Baldwin should have negotiated earlier. That surrender would have saved men. History could have gone that way. But if Belvoir had surrendered, Saladin would have advanced sooner. Jerusalem would have fallen earlier. Thousands more would have died. Belvoir's stand didn't change the final outcome. It changed the cost. And that matters. Because history is not just about who wins. It's about how much suffering is delayed, redirected, or prevented along the way. Now look at this story again, but from inside. Imagine being one of those 700. No relief coming. Water gone. Friends rotting beside you. And still choosing to open the gates. Still choosing to walk forward. Not because you expect to survive, but because surrender feels worse than death. That is not medieval fanaticism. That is human psychology at the edge. When identity matters more than survival. When meaning outweighs fear. That is why this story endures. Not because it's a miracle, but because it's honest. It tells us what people can do when stripped of comfort, hope, and illusion. It tells us that power is not always numbers. That victory is not always conquest. And that sometimes, the most dangerous thing you can say to an enemy is, "I am already prepared to lose everything." That mindset broke Saladin's timetable. That mindset saved a kingdom, for a while. And now, you know the real story. Not the sanitized paragraph. Not the footnote. But the blood-soaked, human truth behind Belvoir Castle. You now know what 99% of people will never hear. And once you see it, you can never unsee it. Because history doesn't belong to the victors alone. It belongs to those who refused to disappear quietly. And Belvoir screamed into the dark. And the world listened.